Hello there, everyone. So, if you're watching this the day it came out, it will be the 21st birthday of the Sega Dreamcast. Now, last year I made a video similar to this as like a sort of month of the Dreamcast, if you will, but not a lot has changed really, except for this. Like, this top 10 list has changed quite a bit since last time. So, certain games have been moved around a bunch, and some new entries are in here. But that's the really only thing that's changed, so I decided to put this out for Dreamcast birthday. So, if you want to know more about the Dreamcast, I did videos on them last year, which I still think hold up. Like, I've done one on the brief history of it, and I've done one on the failure of it. I'll probably link both in the description, either that or a pinned comment, but we'll get to that. So, we're going to be counting down my new top 10 Dreamcast games. So, before we start, we've got to get the usual stuff out of the way. This list is completely 100% my opinion. It is entirely subjective, and your opinions will probably be different from mine. So please don't attack. Second, this list doesn't take into consideration any prices of games or the rarity of games. It's just the overall quality of the games, how much I personally enjoyed them. Lastly, I don't own every game physically, but I have played a lot more of these games than I did last year. Like I said last year, I had played them, but it was like, yeah, played in huge air quotations, like 5 minutes of them. Because at that point, my collection was much smaller, but I have many more of the games now, and because of that, the list is shooken up quite a bit. So, there may be spoilers ahead. It depends on how much I divert from the script, but there shouldn't be too many, and there's one entry in particular I'm not going to talk about story at all, because you really need to experience it for yourself. But without further ado, we're going to get into this video. So, number 10 is a game called Ikarugo. Now, this is a Japanese exclusive shooter, which is really fun and it's incredibly underrated. Probably due to the relative obscurity due to the regional exclusivity. The game is very addictive, like most games in this genre are, because it's a shooter. And because it's a shooter, there aren't any language barriers, so anyone could easily get into the game. It's probably like one of my favorites in the genre that I've played. Probably it's up there with like games like Phoenix and Truxton as some of my favorite shoot 'em ups in 2D. Obviously, like there's 3D ones like Star Fox and all that, but in terms of 2D ones, I think Ikaruga is probably one of my favorite ones. Number 9 is Power Stone 2, which is a really unique 3D fighter developed by Capcom, who are of course known for Street Fighter mostly. The original Power Stone was a launch title for the system, but the sequel is far more loved by most people, and I prefer the sequel over the original. Basically, just because it did what every good sequel does. It improved upon the original in almost every way. This game added new characters, new maps, new multiplayer battle modes, which the original lacked. Um, while there was no lack of fighting games for the Dreamcast, Power Stone 2 is considered one of the best on the platform, especially in 3D. There weren't a ton of huge, big, successful 3D fighters at the time, and still 2D fighters to this day still dominate the fighting genre, but Power Stone 2 is one of the better 3D ones, in my opinion. Number 8 is one I actually do own, Jet Set Radio. Now, this is a very unique release. It was pretty much the first big game to ever use cel-shaded graphics. It was far more common in the early 2000s than it is today, but Jet Set Radio started that trend, and it's visually stunning, especially for the time. The premise of this game is you basically play as a spray can wielding skater with a task of exploring a futuristic based city named Tokyo To. You basically go around spraying graffiti all over the place while rebelling against the police and strengthening your gang. The game gave players a lot to do in the world outside of the main story, such as performing stunts and creating your own graffiti to use in the game. It's one of the lesser known big games, if that makes any sense. Like people know about this one, but it's not like as like well known or well appreciated as some of the later games on this list, especially. But I would say it's definitely worth picking up and playing because it's really fun and it's pretty underrated. So, coming in at number 7 is Choo Choo Rocket. Now, At its core, this is a simple puzzle game featuring cats and mice. Your goal is to get all the mice to a rocket to allow them to escape from the cats. This game offers a lot of content, including single-player missions, the ability to create your own puzzles, and the thing that the game is most popular for and most loved for, the multiplayer battle modes or co-op modes. Multiplayer in this game is utter mayhem, to put it lightly, as not only are you fighting against your friends to save the most mice, but you can also send cats towards other players to stop them in their tracks. The game offers tons of fun and replayability, and it's super easy to jump into now. It's also pretty common, especially in Europe, as it was a pack-in title for a brief period of time, so if you're wanting to play this game, it is not difficult to find. Unlike most puzzle games from the time, or even now to be honest, Choo Rocket is unique, and it has a lot of replay value, especially when you take multiplayer mode into consideration. So, for number 6, I think this is the last one I don't own. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Although I'm pretty sure it is, but anyway. Number 6 is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. Now, this is another fighting game, but it's a more traditional 2D fighter as opposed to Power Stone 2's 3D. The series still continues to this day, but many fans will still claim that the series peaked with this entry. Along with that, the game is almost universally considered to be one of the best 2D fighters ever released, and especially in today's day and age where there are so many 2D fighters, for this game to still hold that title with a lot of people is really impressive 20 years on. The amount of unique special moves and combo potential, along with a huge character roster and brilliant visuals for the time, makes this game phenomenal, and a must-have for the Dreamcast, that ironically I don't have. It's funny, I know. Number 5 is Crazy Taxi 2, which is another one I don't have. I've not found it yet, but I have played a lot of this one, to be fair. So, Crazy Taxi 2 is a sequel to the incredibly popular arcade title Crazy Taxi, which we'll see soon. But out of all the games in this list, it's probably one of the ones that I don't own that I've played the most, which is different from last time where I had barely played this game at all. I still stand by what I said in last year's video, where I think this game is incredibly similar to the first, but that's still not a bad thing. This is a great time, and it's a lot of fun, but it's just not as good as the original in my opinion. I have way more nostalgia towards that, and I've played it longer, I've played it more. It's one of my favorite games on the Dreamcast. It just didn't capture the same feeling for me as the original did. Which, speaking of the original, now might be a good time to bring it in. It's Crazy Taxi 1. This is a port of the smash hit arcade title of the same name, and it's probably the game I'd want to own an arcade cabinet for the most. Yeah, I know, it's not, classic, but, I don't care. So, the game is basically the pure definition of chaos. In this game, you drive at breakneck speeds and attempt to make as much cash as possible in a very limited amount of time, while also performing tricks to impress customers and increase your overall take from the shift. This game is so fun, and it's so easy to play. Basically, you use one button to move and one button to steer. It's super easy to get into. Anyone can get into it. It's easily accessible to all audiences, and it's really super enjoyable. And it's one of the best-selling games on the system, so it's super common, which is great news. It's basically a must-have for any Dreamcast owner. If you get a Dreamcast, you should have Crazy Taxi in your library. And now, we get on to number 3, which is multiple games. We have the Shenmue franchise. So Shenmue 1 and 2. And it's not on the Dreamcast, but Shenmue 3 as well. If I can get them all on the shot, that would be very nice. There we go. They're kind of all together. They're pretty big. Okay, that was a bit of a waste of time. But here they are. The Shenmue series. I'll move them again later, probably. But Shenmue is an epic saga, currently consisting of 3 games. 2 of them were on the Dreamcast. This series, particularly the first game, was one of the first open-world life simulator type games that led to games like The Elder Scrolls and The Witcher that we have today. Without Shenmue, those games may not exist, or may be very different if they did exist. Shenmue is brilliant if you can get into it. This has got to be one of the, you hear people say cult classic. I don't think there's anything more cult classic than Shenmue. Not everybody can enjoy this game, and it's probably the one I can recommend to the least amount of people because you get into it and you might just go, you know what, this is just a boring 2000s open world game. And it could definitely seem like that. It's definitely not the easiest game to get into right away. But if you can stick with it, it is so fun. If you can get into it, you really should play it. Because honestly, it is an unforgettable experience that is still incredibly impressive nearly 20 years later. Shenmue 2 was one of the last Sega made games for the Dreamcast. If you live in North America, you won't be able to play this game on the Dreamcast, as for some reason they decided not to release it in that region, obviously. Instead, you'd have to get the Xbox version, which I don't have, or the remastered version on PS4 and Xbox One, which I do have, and I think I used that in last year's video to be a placeholder, because I don't even know, I don't even think I had Shenmue 1 physically at the time. Shenmue 2 and 3 are more recent. 3 I got December, and then 2 I got in March of this year, I think, right before everything kind of fell apart. But the reason I've included all of these games in one slot, instead of what I did last year where I broke them up in slots, is one, because mostly I've played other Dreamcast games and I can fill the list now and don't have to split them up like that. Still can't do it for Crazy Taxi 2, apparently. Oh well. But the main reason is that I, as well as most Shenmue fans, see 3 games, but it's one story. Like, Shenmue 1 leaves things off, and Shenmue 2 picks it up immediately after, and then Shenmue 3 picks it up immediately after Shenmue 2 finishes. They are one continuous story, which is exactly what the creator behind the series planned it to be. So, it may be 3 separate games, but it's one big game, shall we say. So, anyway, yeah. Basically, the 2 Dreamcast games make up 2 parts of a really big game that was never completely finished until we got Shenmue 3 over here, which, has, pleased some and upset other people because, some people don't like it because they weren't Shenmue fans to begin with, but basically, with the 3rd game out now, I mean, if you don't understand, Shenmue 3 is basically, it's like saying if Shenmue 3 exists, pretty much anything can happen in the video game industry, because this game, by all accounts, really should not exist. Like, I'm not saying that as like a bad thing or to hate on anything, because I actually really, really like the game, but I mean, like, if you put like a list of things that are unlikely to happen ever, Shenmue 3 existing is pretty high on that list, or it was, I guess. But with Shenmue 3 out now, there is a chance that the series may continue on further. The series creator is very adamant that he wants to create a 4th game, and I would love to see a 4th game. I hope it doesn't take 20 years like it did between 2 and 3, but you never know. The games on the Dreamcast, though, parts 1 and 2, basically, they look and feel incredibly similar, and that's another reason that they get lumped together in one entry on this list now, because it's clear that they're basic. Like, the games, I'm pretty sure they're running off the same engine, using the same models for the returning characters at the very least. It feels like they are just the same game. Like, it doesn't, like, they're not really separate games. You have to play Shenmue 1 to play Shenmue 2. If you just jump into Shenmue 2, it doesn't make any sense. So, sorry, I got lost. Anyway, the 3rd game is not a Dreamcast game, obviously. This is a collector's edition case. It's actually on PS4 and PC at the moment. But the 3rd game does the same thing as 1 and 2 in the sense of, like, the story finishes in 1 and it picks up in the next one. But it isn't a Dreamcast game, despite how much it could feel like 1 at times. So I'm not really going to talk about it too much here. I might do a full review of the game at some point, but for now, all I'm going to say is it's a very faithful continuation of the franchise, but with more modern day visuals. So we'll put that to the side for now, and we'll just move Shenmue 1 and 2 into the shot for a sec. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, because this is like, this was the game I didn't want to talk about story too much in. Basically, you play as Ryo Hazuki, who you can see on the front covers on both. He is the guy with the black hair and the biker jacket. He's your main character, and he goes around trying to hunt down this guy called Landy, who is on the cover of Shenmue 1, but isn't on the Shenmue 2 cover. He's in the Shenmue 1 background. He's the guy with the big dragon robe on, and he's hunting him down because Landy did something to Ryo's family that he must have revenge on. I'm not going to spoil it because you should play it yourself. Although, to be fair, you see it in like the first 5 minutes of the game, so... That's all I'm going to say about the story. The gameplay can feel dated. The controls are not the best. But these games are great, and they really deserve to be played by more people. And it's good to see that the HD remakes are out, and that they're doing relatively well. Well, they did relatively well. They're a few years old now. And Shenmue 3 is doing okay as well, but it was never going to be a huge, big success, because that's not really the aim of the series, honestly. Like, obviously it's to make money and everything, but it was never going to be on this level where it could compete with, like, the biggest games. Like, it was never going to be Call of Duty or FIFA levels of success, but if you can play Shenmue 1 and 2 and you enjoy them, and you can play Shenmue 3 and you enjoy that as well, then that's going to be a great gaming experience. Like, these games, I can't emphasize enough how great of an experience these games give. A phenomenal story. Yes, dated controls, dated visuals, but I mean, for the time, these were probably some of the best looking games that were ever made. But that's enough talking about Shenmue. I'm sure people are fed up of talking about Shenmue right now. But with that, we move on to number 2, which is a game I had ranked way too low last year because I hadn't played it. Skies of Arcadia. This, I'm just going to say, is probably the best JRPG I've ever played. That means I think it's better than Final Fantasy VII. I don't care. I just don't. This game is so unbelievably amazing. Like, I had really good expectations for this game going into it, but this game just blew them all away. Like, this is one of my favorite games of all time. It could be number 1. It's a debate between this and what the actual number 1 is. But anyway, let's actually get into the game. Let's talk a little bit about it. So, Skies of Arcadia is a turn-based JRPG, similar to the Final Fantasy series, obviously. The story revolves around a rogue air pirate by the name of Vice and his friends Aika and Fina, who are all on the cover here. They traverse a massive world for the time. It's actually pretty big now, to be fair. Not like, it's not like Witcher 3 or Skyrim levels of huge, but big for the time. And the world is full of things to discover, plenty of secrets along the way. And the game does something really unique. Like, you have your turn-based standard RPG fights where it's your characters on the map versus some random enemies that have spawned, typical random encounters. This game has another form of boss fight, really. It's like a type of boss fight, but it's not like the traditional boss fight. Like, you get the traditional boss fight, which is the same as every other JRPG ever. But this game, basically, as the name might imply, you actually are in the sky. You're called air pirates, which is a really funny thing to think about. Like, basically, in a giant pirate ship in the sky, and it's phenomenal. But with that, you actually have the ability to fight other ships, be that pirate ships or Imperial Armada ships, and it's really fun, and it's such a shame that there's only one game in the series. Like, out of all the franchises that Sega just let die and never brought back, this is the one that I really want to see them do something else with. Like, more than any other game that Sega have ever done, I would like to see something done with this series. A remaster, a sequel, even a port, just anything. Saying, hey, Skies of Arcadia, that was a great game. Acknowledge this game's existence because it was so good. But anyway, there was also a minigame that you could install onto the VMU, which is the memory card for the Dreamcast. If you knew me, you know what a VMU is. It's a little memory card for the Dreamcast. It's white, it has a screen on it. But you could install a game on that, which would actually get you rewards within the actual game. Like, you could transfer your data from the minigame onto the full game, and you'd actually get new weapons and armor and stuff, which was awesome. But yeah, this game, it's incredibly long, like, especially for the time. Like, I think I clocked in about 150 hours on this game on my first playthrough. So, I mean, I was taking it slow and doing relative grinding, but it's a nice long JRPG, plenty to do, and you just simply can't put it down. Like, whenever I would stop playing it, I'd be like, right, what happens next? Okay, I need to finish this grinding session so I can find out what happens next. Like, the characters are just so, like, I instantly fell in love with all the characters. They're so well written. They're so likable. It's just that instant connection that you have with characters that you don't always feel with every kind of game. But yeah, this game is definitely one that you have to try. It is unfortunately very expensive, but if you can get it, please get it. It is worth every penny. It is such a great game. And I mean, it is hard in the JRPG genre to not just be infinitely compared to Final Fantasy or called an inferior Final Fantasy clone. Especially considering how successful the Final Fantasy series is, it's not hard to see why some would think that. But anybody who's saying that has never played this game. This game is so good. Skies of Arcadia really differentiates itself from Final Fantasy in every way. It's nothing like that game at all. It's an absolute masterpiece, and you owe it to yourself to play this game, especially if you liked any other JRPG. This is so worth playing. But anyway, now before we get to number one, I'm not going to really do an honorable mention section. I'm just going to quickly address Sonic Adventure 2. Like I did last year, it's not on the list, and it wasn't on the list last year. That's not because I think the game is bad. But we need to quickly address the game because it is a great game, and it definitely deserves to be on this list. So why isn't it? Well, apparently there is a terrible issue with nearly a third of all copies produced, in which the game is completely unbeatable due to an unavoidable game-breaking glitch in the final level, where you're playing as a character and it's a multi-part stage. So you play as all the characters you play through the entire game. You complete the first stage and it's all fine. You get onto the second part of the level and you basically just clip through the floor and there's nothing you can do to stop it, which is incredibly annoying considering it's on the final level. You go all the way through the game, then on the final level, you just die infinitely. That must have been pretty bad. So, obviously for that reason, I can't recommend buying the Dreamcast version of this game, unless it's a collector's piece. I wouldn't buy this version to play it, especially when the enhanced re-release on the GameCube, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, offers much more content, especially in the multiplayer section. I would definitely recommend getting that version over the Dreamcast original, unless you have to have the Dreamcast original. But beware, you have a risk of running into this glitch. So, if this glitch wasn't present in the game, then Sonic Adventure 2 would definitely be on this list. I don't know where I would have placed it. I think I'd probably have placed it beneath Crazy Taxi. But this potential issue cannot be overlooked, especially when you have quite a high chance of getting a copy with the glitch present, since, it's on a third of all copies, allegedly. I mean, I've heard multiple sources say that it's there, but then, again, you never know. People could just be full of it. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and say I recommend the GameCube version. I'd recommend the GameCube version anyway, or even the PS3 and Xbox 360 re-release on Xbox Live and PSN. But with that out of the way, on to number one, which may not be pretty obvious. It's Sonic Adventure 1. Yeah, I think this game's better than Sonic Adventure 2. What are you going to do? This is the first Dreamcast game I ever saw. It's the first Dreamcast game I ever played. And it is still an absolutely phenomenal game that is incredibly fun to play to this day. Now, there's probably a lot of you sitting out there thinking that Sonic is just for kids and that the games are just, a big joke. The games franchise is just a huge joke, but this game was from a time where Sonic was still considered awesome. I swear. I'm determined to make that joke all the time. Like, I'm pretty sure I made it in last year's video as well. But yeah, there was a time, long ago it feels like, where Sonic was like the cool platformer that everybody wanted to play. And now, unfortunately, it's not really that way anymore. Mainly because Sega likes to make jokes about it and all that. Oh well. But back then, liking Sonic games was perfectly acceptable for anybody of all ages. In fact, it was like there was a time where if you had a system that wasn't Nintendo, if you had a Sega console, people would be like, "Why don't you have Sonic?" Like, if you had a Mega Drive, why don't you have Sonic 1, 2, 3? If you had a Dreamcast, why don't you have Sonic Adventure 1 and 2? If you had a Saturn, then oh yeah, there wasn't one. We'll talk about Saturn one day, won't we? Anyway, there is so much to like about this game to this day. It may have been the first 3D Sonic game, and it sometimes can feel like it. Yeah, like one thing people like to bring up is the camera controls. Yeah, they're not the best, but the rest of the controls in the game still hold up really well. Like, I think this is probably the best controlling Sonic game. Like, I mean, there are other Sonic games I prefer to this one. Well, there's one, but that game has controls that work really well for its game. Like the Sonic game I prefer over Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, but Sonic Heroes controls don't work for everything. Like there are things in that game that are made for the controls of that game. Like if you put Sonic Heroes physics into Sonic Adventure, it wouldn't work. If you put Sonic Adventure physics into Sonic Heroes, it could work. It would be slower and it wouldn't be as fun, but I think it could work. I really think this is probably the best controlling Sonic game. But then again, there's 6 different characters, and all their stories interlock for an amazingly varied story and an amazingly varied, fun styles of gameplay. Well, for the most part. And not to mention the pretty good visuals for the time. Like, yeah, some of the models are a bit but the soundtrack is astounding. Last year I said there was no competition for me when I said that Sonic Adventure was my personal favorite game on the Dreamcast. Skies of Arcadia is on that list now too. It is close. It's a close call, but I had to go for Adventure 1 because I just have so much nostalgia for this game. I played this game a ton, even before I had a Dreamcast. I played it on the Xbox 360 Dreamcast collection. It is a really solid game. Like, this is the best-selling game on the Dreamcast, so it's super cheap, it's easy to find, and this game came from a time where Sega treated the franchise seriously, before they started making jokes about it every 5 seconds. They actually tried to make Big the Cat a serious character in this game. Didn't work, but at least they didn't just say, "Hey look, funny cat, go ha-ha." Yeah, modern-day Sega isn't exactly what they used to be. Although I would never say that Sega died with the Dreamcast, like others like to say, because Sonic Heroes exists, and that's a phenomenal game. But yeah, Sega isn't exactly what they were. I would love to sit here and say, Dreamcast 2? Yeah, it's going to happen, but it's not. There is no scenario in which I could see Sega making another console, unless we talk about the Game Gear Micro, but that doesn't exist, and you know it doesn't. It just doesn't count. It unfortunately does exist. I made a rant about it. It unfortunately does exist, but it doesn't count. It counts as, stupid. But anyway, those are my personal picks for the top 10 Sega Dreamcast games, in my opinion. If you disagree, that's perfectly fine. I'm expecting it. I know some of you are going to be like, Final Fantasy VII is far better than Skies of Arcadia for this reason, and I don't care about those reasons. Skies of Arcadia is better. Okay. But anyway, that's my list. Agree, disagree. It's up to you. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you later. Hopefully we'll be back to some sort of regular schedule now with, the world kind of being, a bit more normal. I don't know if I'll do weekly, maybe twice. Maybe, once every 2 weeks. I was about to say twice a week there, I'm like, no. Maybe once every 2 weeks. I don't know. Might do, an update talking about future plans and stuff. I don't know. If the demand's there, I guess. But let me know what you thought of this. Thank you for watching. Happy 21st birthday, Sega Dreamcast. Sega, make a good Sonic game again, or, do anything. See you guys later. Goodbye.